Hello YouTube, this is Kolbot Forever bringing you an instruction video on how to use Auto Rush. We're going to start by opening up our character configuration for our rusher, and we're going to go down to about line 290 or so. This is for a paladin. It may vary if you use a sorceress or some other character, but it'll be a similar place. We're going to change Rushbot to true for our rusher, and the next step is to come down to the next line where it says wait for player count. I had issues with this one, even if I tried using the correct number. I would suggest you just use 0 and don't wait. But make sure you get your order correct when you start all your bots, especially if you're doing a lot of them. So this may seem confusing, but try to follow me here. You're going to start all of the bots except for the one who's going to make the actual games for your characters to be rushed in. In other words, there's going to be one character that you're going to set as D2 bot lead, and that character is going to be the rushee, not the rusher. And the reason, and this is, it seems backwards, but it's not. The reason for this is because the rushee needs to make the game, because otherwise the quest will be completed already if this character, the rusher, was to make the game. I hope that makes sense. If not, I'm going to show it a little bit more later so that you guys can kind of figure out what I'm talking about. Anyway, moving on. You can pick any of the quests that you want. It doesn't really matter. And then the last run, what that means is on line 302, it means where are you going to stop for the rush. For normal and nightmare, you're probably going to want Bale. For hell, you're probably going to want to put Anya, because unless you have a level 60, you can't get the Ancients quest and, of course, the Bale quest done. So that's it for the rusher. And then we're going to move on to one of the rushies, just as an example next. Okay, moving on to the rushie, and in this case the bumper for our rushie. And we need to make sure that our leader is correctly spelled. This is the leader's name in-game, or at least that's how I chose to do it. I also added this random quit interval. You don't need to do this, but I find that it helps alleviate some crashes if you do. So just make sure that you get your character name spelled correctly. You can use profile names if you prefer. You would need to change this to a 1 and then use the profile names. And you can also use like a quit list. That's what this is. If he quits, then everybody quits is how I have it set up, because that character is the rusher. And then come back down to the auto rush section of your rushee. This is line 304, 305, 306. We need to change it to true because this is still a rushee. And then for the bumper, which is what this character is, you're also going to do true. And if this was not a bumper, you would just put false for each of the rushies that is just a level 1 or whatever the case may be. And that's how you do the rushies. So if it's the rushie and not a bumper, it's true on line 304. And then on line 306, it will also be true if it's the bumper. Now these aren't necessary, but if you wanted to, you could run, well, you can change these configuration scripts. This is going to be located, this is the starter config.javascript. This is going to be in Kolbot, your base Kolbot folder, D2BS, Kolbot again, libs, then starter, and then if you go into starterconfig.js or JavaScript, you'll see some options here. This is not necessary, but if you want to do this, and I suggest that you do because it makes it easier to see what's going on if you're doing lots of characters. If you're just doing one, this probably isn't necessary or needed, but basically what's going to happen is they're going to join channel, and you can choose whichever channel you want, and they're going to let you know that they're joining the game. And I like to do this because I was running 6 rushies and 1 rusher, and to see them all saying and entering games and leaving that channel just made it easier for me. So if you want to do that, you can, and this is where you do it. And you can see how I have it set up. I have it set up as join channel OP Dark Vigilante, joining game, and then I have announce games on true. You don't have to do that, but if you want to, you can. And then they can say a custom message if you want to, whatever you like. And then don't forget to click File Save when you're done. Okay, second to the last step, we have another configuration file we want to edit. This is just to make sure that all the characters will actually join into the proper character's game. So remember, as I said before, the rushee, who's going to make the games, is going to be the leader in this particular case, and then everybody else, including the rusher is going to be a follower. It's a little confusing, but if you've done rushes before, you understand that you need the person who's going to be rushed, who doesn't have the quest completed already, to make the game. And that's all we're doing here. So in order to do that, we need to go into our Kolbot folder, D2BS, Kolbot, libs, systems, follow, and then follow config.js, and then you're going to see this. Now mine's already set up, and I'm going to explain how I have it set up. The easiest thing to do is set it as all, as you see here. That means that all characters will join this character right here when set as followers. Now if you wanted to do individual ones, you could do that by making each one with their profile name, not their character name, separated by a comma and quotation marks. Let me give you an example. You put a comma, space, quotation mark, dark, pal. Let's say that was my profile name, not my account, not my character name. Make sure you get that right, or this will not work. So if you want to do that, you could do that for each profile instead of doing all. If you want to do just one at a time, you can. Personally, I find all works fine. I don't tend to use follow, D2bot follow very often, so I find that that works just fine. And then this, again, is your, just to be perfectly clear, this is your Rushee, who's making the game, who does not have all their quests completed, so that the rusher can bring the rest of your characters through the rush. Last step, we're going to be looking at the profiles in d2bot.exe. Okay, so this should be your final step, but I failed to mention something before. Before you go through all of this, I strongly recommend making your characters that you're going to rush before you go through all this, so that you have all the names and everything set up. You could do this before that, but I find it just to be easier to do it that way instead. So let's take a look at our rusher versus our rushee. So here is my rusher, and you'll notice it's set as d2bot follow and not set as lead. The reason for this is we need it to follow in the rushee, as I mentioned before, into the game that he's making, or she, and that way they will be able to actually complete the quest. So that's what I meant by that a few times before, and that's all you need to do is just set it as d2bot follow for your rusher and all of your rushees except for the rushee who's going to be making the games so that you can complete the quest. Now let's take a look at our rushee who's going to be making the games, and you're just going to be setting that particular character as d2bot lead. Now all these other characters, except for this top one because I didn't do that because I already had that character rushed, are going to be rushed. So this one is the rusher, these are all rushees. The way I would suggest you start this is start this one last. So this is the one that's going to create the game. Start all of these first, and they will sit there in the channel the way I showed you, and they will wait for the rushee, who's going to make the game, to show up, create the game, and then they'll all join in after. That's what I had success with, and that's what I'm going to recommend you do as well, especially if you're going to do lots of characters like I did here. And that concludes that. If you want to, I will include two different sets of videos, one that includes the demo and one that doesn't, if you don't have any interest in seeing the demo and my opinions and the issues that I had. Then you can skip that and go through it yourself. I highly recommend that you watch that video. I'll put a link down in the description. Like I said, I'll do separate and together, so however you like that. If you guys haven't subscribed, please do so already. These videos take forever to make. I'd really appreciate a subscription, and I hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you next time.